Yeah, we've got a bit of a problem. There's a habit of symbolic reference so entrenched in human culture, we aren't bothered by it. Or worse, we're amused by it. Hi folks, it's Cypris. Today we're going deep into symbolic reference. The blade, a fundamental altar tool for modern practitioners. Gerald Gardner named it an atheum or athame, a bastardization after the Latin artavus or quill knife. And for most, if not all of us, it's meant to represent masculine energy. And why is that? Well, not to put too fine a point on it, but it pierces. Yeah, we get it. Pretty obvious, right? But, that's super violent. If you actually think about it, that ought to make us feel cringy. And yet, the portrayal of masculine virility as knives, guns, cannons, and battering rams is ubiquitous. In the tilt yard celebrations of Queen Elizabeth I, a great onslaught would be staged, with knights railing impotently against her impregnable royal gates, of course symbolizing her perennially inviolate royal virginity. In other words, if it's a weapon, it's also a penis.
And I see your Schwartz is as big as mine.
In our world of symbolic associations, it's just a given.
Series 4 deatomizer.
That's what I'm talking about.
Noisy cricket.
I'm going to share with you a secret. The phallus, as Freud describes it, a symbolic referent of strength, potency, masculinity, the phallus was not always a weapon. Okay, buckle up folks, because this magic school bus is going way back. Archaeologists and historians may be better equipped to delineate the transition, but from what I've read, the symbol of the phallus was not really elided with weaponry and violence until the advent of war, and what some have called the domestication of women. Yeah, you know, like livestock. The earliest reference to weapon as phallus I've come across dates from the 23rd century BCE, and our earliest known author. Enheduanna was high priestess of Ur during the reign of her father, Sargon of Akkad. At one point in her tenure, there was a short-lived takeover by a man named Lugalan. In the process, he tried to gain political legitimacy to his rule through a forced and violent union with the high priestess. What's interesting to me here is that in her record of the event, Enheduanna mentions Lugalan's use of a knife as intrinsic to the kind of trespass he was making. And yes, this is in translation to English. He wipes his spit-soaked hand on my honey-sweet mouth. My beautiful image fades under dust. He robbed me of the true crown of the high priestess. He gave me the ritual dagger of mutilation. He said, "It becomes you." I think it's important here to point out that this early use of a blade as phallus is specifically describing an intimate attack on her person, not a mutually consensual activity. When we imagine weapons as phallic imagery, this is the nature of the interaction we are really referring to. But, as I said, this is an early example of a weapon described this way. For the vast majority of human history, or technically prehistory, masculinity was a much different concept than what we have today. Now, getting into the vast span of prehistory is spotty at best. Our knowledge is limited by what we can glean from the archaeological and geological records, made even more elusive by the fact that a cataclysmic event wiped out most evidences of human civilization and occupation about 12.8 thousand years ago. So we don't know much about the humans who came before us. But we do know that gender was a completely different story. Generally, specialized occupations were not based on one's plumbing. I'm talking about places like Chauvet, where men and women shared equal status and whose bones bear equal markers of a physical workload. And there is varying evidence to this effect throughout the Paleolithic, or Stone Age. Ergo, the perceptions and conceptions of male identity and influence on the world were very different. There was more of an emphasis on nature and natural processes and on a surging of excess. When we see masculine energy or potency illustrated symbolically, we get images of fertile plant stems shooting up from the wet soil in the rainy season. Take this oddly vegetative carving on a bone fragment from the Upper Magdalenian, 12 to 17,000 years ago. Or this excerpt from an English translation of The Courtship of Inanna and Dumuzi, an ancient Sumerian love poem. At the king's lap stood the rising cedar. Plants grew high by their side. Grains grew high by their side. Gardens flourished luxuriantly. Inanna sang, "He has sprouted, he has burgeoned, he is lettuce planted by the water. He is the one my womb loves best, my well-stocked garden of the plain, my barley growing high in its furrow, my apple tree which bears fruit up to its crown. He is lettuce planted by the water." It's also common to use the imagery of milk or cream gushing prolifically. Keep in mind that Dumuzi, Inanna's consort, is a dairy goat herd. The shepherd went to the royal house with cream. Dumuzi went to the royal house with milk. Before the door he called out, "Open the house, my lady, open the house." Inanna sang, "Make your milk sweet and thick, my bridegroom. My shepherd, I will drink your fresh milk. Wild bull Dumuzi, make your milk sweet and thick. I will drink your fresh milk. Let the milk of the goat flow in my sheepfold. Fill my holy churn with honey cheese. Lord Dumuzi, I will drink your fresh milk." I don't know, I guess they must have had access to lots of pineapple or something like it in ancient Mesopotamia. As well, and probably unsurprisingly, the act of plowing the field was also a ready metaphor. Now, modern censors are more tetchy about sexual language and anatomy than ancient ones. So I'm going to be substituting the word earth every time the text refers to something more literal. Just keep that in mind as I read this next bit. Or better, if you're over 18, look up the whole poem yourself. You won't be disappointed. "The boat of heaven is full of eagerness like the young moon. My untilled land lies fallow. As for me, Inanna, who will plow my earth? Who will plow my high field? Who will plow my wet ground? As for me, the young woman, who will plow my earth? Who will station the ox there? Who will plow my earth?" Dumuzi replied, "Great lady, the king will plow your earth. I, Dumuzi the king, will plow your earth." Inanna, Then plow my earth, man of my heart, plow my earth. I mean, it's kind of a very different vibe from "she thinks my tractor's sad." Moving on. The bull, or male ungulate, as that last excerpt hinted at, was a favored symbol. We're probably all familiar with figures like Cernunnos, Pan, Baphomet, perhaps slightly less so the Cretan Auroch, and those impressive signature horns. Instead, most people now remember this beast as the Cretan Minotaur, and this figure, this man-bull, is a depiction of the sacred masculine that dates back as far as the occupation of the Chauvet cave in southern France, where, in the innermost main chamber, an artist painted a minotaur embracing the stylized lower torso of the great mother goddess. And from this union springs forth all life, as we can see the herds all springing into life on the walls of this chamber and heading out toward birth, toward the entrance of the cave. Admittedly, this is a modern attempt to interpret images dating up to 30 or 40,000 years ago from a people who left nothing that we consider a written record, but I am quite partial to this interpretation. So really, the horn is very special because it has maintained its symbolic relevance over the millennia. It's a wonderful phallic symbol. A lot of Norse pagans enjoy a waxed bovine horn for drinking mead, as you can see from this image from Grimfrost. Yes, they sell them. And you may have seen my kudu horns make their way into the background of some of my videos. I source these specifically for that more healthy, balanced male energy that horns and other Paleolithic phalli embody. What? What do I mean by more balanced? Well, let me explain. Firstly, horns are phallic. I think the reasons for this association are obvious, but a horn is also a vessel, as we saw with the mead cup. So they represent sacred union. The masculine and feminine are harmoniously in balance. It's clearly phallic, but in a way that doesn't cancel out or do violence to the female element. So going back to the blade, for the purposes of magic and ritual, I only use my blade for energetic cutting. I will not use it to represent male energy. I've seen enough violence. I can, instead, use a wand, which comes from a tree branch and has symbolic overlap with those shoots of plants erupting in spring. Or I can use a Shiva lingam. These quartz-based stones are gathered from sacred rivers in India and honed and polished into this stylized shape representing the god Shiva, or more specifically, his creative potency. These stones are often positioned over a yoni plate representing the goddess Shakti and her female generative power. But there is also an interpretation of these stones that identifies the red blotches as emblematic of the female energy united with the stone. I think we can imagine why that might be without spelling it out. And of course, it bears saying that if you have access to the real-life inspiration for all these implements, that too can be a useful ritual tool. And that is a very brief discussion of the phallus symbol through history. Indeed, we've barely touched the tip of all the information available on this pressing topic, and perhaps regrettably kept it short and quick. So moving forward, I would love to see us all grow a little more mindful about and aware of how we work with and amuse ourselves with phallic symbolism in life, art, and ritual. Let's see weaponry for what it is: violence. And let's instead appreciate and celebrate life-affirming symbols of virility, plenty, wholeness, and union. So that's my little TED Talk on how we symbolize masculinity. Thank you so much for watching. And for those who might be ingloriously tempted, no. This humored but intellectual discussion of an important vein in symbolic reference was not an invitation to harass me with grade school level observations or queries. Just don't. And for the rest of you, especially my regulars, I do feel the love and support. It means so much. I'll see all of you in the next video, and until then, keep your research wild. That take was actually working, but thank you. Dates from the vehicle running by. Shit, I need the book. Forgot the book. That was awkward. But, as I said, more cards are gonna go by. My untilled land lies fallow. That's not what I wanted to read. Made even more elusive by the fact that cards are going by again. Like the young moon. That was awkward. We're probably gonna die of cars going by. Perhaps slightly less so the Cretan Auric and Uruk.